What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome in to an all-new episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. It's here, our last deep dive of this rookie class. Tear in my eye, although I am a little bit excited to kind of move past the deep dives as much as I love doing them and just kind of getting into some of the other offseason stuff. We've got OTAs coming up next week, which is going to be a ton of fun. So looking forward to all of that. Also, we have some undrafted free agents to kind of review in the coming days as well. Might do a Donovan Jennings deep dive for members only this week. We'll see. You never quite know what's going to come up, but we do know that today is schedule release day. And we know a couple things already. We know that the Packers are going to take on the Eagles in Brazil in week 1. We've known that for a while now. There's been some rumors from the one and only Ross Uglum that the Packers are going to play Indianapolis at home in week 2. We'll see if that comes to fruition as the schedule officially gets released today. We found out that Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets are going to play the 49ers on Monday Night Football. Hopefully this Monday Night Football goes a little bit better for them than last year's Monday Night Football opener. But those are the things we kind of know about the Packers and former Packers so far. But we're about to get inundated with every single game on the entire calendar for the upcoming season. Tomorrow we will break it all down and go over all the advantages, all the disadvantages, everything that you need to know about the Packers schedule. But I know a lot of people really look forward to schedule release day. So happy schedule release day to all of you. All right, shout out really quick to Keontae Mack, brand new Pack a Day podcast YouTube member. Thank you so much for signing up. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to do so. Members only Q&A coming later this week. As I mentioned, I think this week's members only video is going to be that deep dive of Donovan Jennings, but we've got those new members only videos every single week. So make sure to check those out. We did have some huge roster moves from the Packers on Wednesday. They signed 6 more of their draft picks. I care so little about this that I didn't even look at which 6 they signed. And you guys know me. I look at everything, every little minute detail of anything that goes on Packers, because we're talking about them 365 days a year. This is how little I care, because guess what? They're all going to get signed. They all basically have a specific contract structure that they're going to get signed to based on where they were slotted in the draft. There's not a lot of drama here like there used to be. Yeah, sometimes in that second round range, you can get into some offset money sort of negotiations and things like that. Those can drag on a little bit further. We'll see if Green Bay has any issues there. Until there's an issue, there's no issue. And until there's an issue, we don't really need to talk about it. They signed 6 more. I think they've got 8 signed. I don't even know which 8. I think it's their first and second rounders that are remaining. But whatever it is, they'll get there eventually. And all these rookies will end up under contract sooner rather than later. And that really brings us to our main topic for today, which is the one, the only Kalen King, 7th round pick, 5'11", 190-pound corner out of Penn State. He is a third-year junior, and here's one of the key things of his entire breakdown. He is 21 years old. He does not turn 22 until January of next year. So he'll basically complete, hopefully not the entirety of the season if they play into February. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But the majority of this season as a true 21-year-old. And that is what you really want to see from a developmental prospect that you're taking a flyer on at the end of the 7th round, is somebody who still has a ton of developmental potential. And that's what we have here with Kalen King still being a true 21-year-old and not turning 22 until January. 30 7/8 inch arms, 8 3/4 inch hands. Those are all the bio info things that you need to know about Kalen King. How about statistically? All right, well, in 2021, 23 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 forced fumble, 5 pass breakups, and 0 interceptions. In 2022, he had 30 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble, 21 pass breakups, and 3 picks. 2022 was by far and away his best season. We'll talk about that. In 2023, took a bit of a step back. 29 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, no forced fumbles, only 2 pass breakups, and no interceptions. All right, how about those PFF coverage stats? Because those are always really, really interesting. In 2021 per PFF, he was targeted 20 times, only 6 completions, a 30% completion percentage, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 pass breakups, a 92.1 rating, and 3 overall penalties. He was not put in a ton of high leverage situations in that 2021 season, but still only a 30% completion percentage is pretty darn good, but did have 3 penalties and 2 touchdowns given up. In 2022, he was targeted 59 times, only 27 completions, 45.8% completion percentage. And unlike 2021, he was put in a lot of high leverage situations. He was put on an island. He was, the corner. Obviously, Porter on the other side was another huge corner for them, but he was, especially with Porter not getting thrown at a ton, Kalen King saw a lot of passes his way. So this was a big time, big time season for Kalen King. And again, responded with only 45.8% completion percentage allowed, 343 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. PFF had him for 9 pass breakups, which is quite a bit different than his statistics showing 21 pass breakups. Yeah, you can, trust whatever source that you want there. 48.9 passer rating and 0 penalties. So a massive 2022 for Kalen King. In 2023, 25 of 41, 61% completion percentage, quite a bit different than that 45.8 from the season before. 290 yards allowed, no touchdowns, no interceptions, only 1 pass breakup, an 82.4 rating, and 4 penalties. We'll get back to more of the difference between 2022 and 2023 in just a little bit. But from an athletic standpoint, 6.68 relative athletic score. He didn't do the bench press and he did not do the 3-cone. He did everything else, but not the bench and not the 3-cone. Tested 62nd percentile in height, 61st percentile in weight, 76th percentile in vertical jump, 64th percentile in broad jump, 76th percentile in the short shuttle. And here's the big one, though. Only 35th percentile in that 40-yard dash. That was not as good, very clearly. And we're going to talk about why that's a bit of an issue when we get into some of his negatives here in just a moment as well. From a PFF grading standpoint, in 2021, had a 66.4 grade on 279 snaps. Remember, 60 is that even point. 2022 had an 89.0 grade on 557 snaps, and in 2023 had a 60.3 grade on 481 snaps. So again, 2022, at least per PFF standards, was his best season. You don't have to watch very much tape in any of those seasons to very quickly realize 2022 was very much his best season. He also had 222 career special team snaps, and he graded above average, not by a ton, but above average as a special teamer in all 3 seasons by PFF. Also had 109 kick coverage snaps, had 0 punt coverage snaps, but 109 of those were in kick coverage, which is something that I do think he could be utilized as both in kick and punt coverage, assuming he makes the team in 2024. Let's start with the positives first. And the positives were truly the 2022 tape. There's some really fun matchups in that 2022 tape, by the way, with Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed got the best of him on one play, and then Kalen King got the best of him on another play. And then there's a play down the field where Jayden Reed really thought that he had, was going to get a pass interference call, didn't get it. Kalen King's kind of running with him stride for stride. Certainly Jayden Reed has a little bit of a step of separation there, but it was a fun battle between the two. But that was a really fun just sort of tape to watching Jayden Reed go against Kalen King. But overall, Kalen King in 2022 was massively, massively impressive. And here's the thing. I obviously watched 21 first, then 22, then 23. 21 I watched and it wasn't super impressive. I know that it wasn't super high leverage and I know only 30% completion percentage, yada, yada, but there were those penalties. There were the 2 touchdowns allowed. I didn't think it looked very good. And knowing kind of what I knew coming in that 2023, because I watched some of 2023 right after he was drafted, I knew that 2023 wasn't necessarily great either. And I'm watching 2021, 21's not great. And I'm like, all right, what's going to end up happening here is 2022 will look fine, but when we look at the whole, it's just not going to be as good. But you go and watch 2022 on the whole, and it is really, really good film all the way around. Like good overall intensity, good tackling, good coverage. Like he flipped his hips. Well, we'll talk about all the positives here in just a second, but the 2022 tape was legitimate. And then I got to 2023 again and I watched it. And while it definitely was nowhere near the 2022 tape, it was nowhere near catastrophic either. I agree that the Ohio State tape and Marvin Harrison sort of ate him alive. And you definitely don't want to see a player take that step back in their final season, in college before they go and are eligible for the draft and come out for the draft. But I didn't think 2023 outside of that Ohio State game was that bad. It was, as PFF sort of had it, a 60.3 grade. It was an average season. It was not anything spectacular, but it also wasn't anything atrocious. And I thought when you had that unbelievable 2022 tape out there that showed exactly what he was capable of at age 20, by the way, or at least what, age 19, 20, by the way, that to me is what really stood out here. And I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but I kind of want to just talk about it now. We hear all the time, and I talk about all the time, that you scout the player on sort of their high-end traits and what they can ultimately become. And it was interesting to me with Kalen King that so much of the just conversation, so much of the talking points was based upon him not having the 2023 that everyone expected, and just sort of forgetting in a way how good he was in 2022. And also sort of making it seem like 2023 was just this unmitigated nightmare. I thought he actually finished the season strong. There's a Michigan State tape at the end of the year, that game specifically, that I actually thought he played pretty well in. And like I said, outside of the Ohio State game, yeah, there's some games that aren't as good as you would like them to be. But I didn't think they were atrocious. I didn't think it was terrible. I think it was enough to kick him all the way down to one of the final picks in the 7th round of the draft. So that was what was surprising to me. So a little bit of a different take on this than what we've done in any of the prior breakdowns. But to me, just the real positive here was how good he was in 2022. Next up, and this is another big one that I want to sort of conjoin with this 2022-2023 talk. This was per the 33rd team. They did the research here, and I really, really like this because it stood out to me when I watched him in 2023. In 2023, it felt like they utilized him more in some off-coverage looks than they did in 2022. And I don't know if they just did that from a defensive standpoint overall with Penn State, or I know it wasn't just Kalen King. You could see the other corners as well, but it didn't feel like Kalen King got as many opportunities to maybe do what he does best, which is play that press man. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because in 2022, per the 33rd team, in press man, opposing quarterbacks were 9 of 28 for 153 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and 9 pass breakups in 2022. 9 of 28, 153, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks, 9 pass breakups. Those are incredible numbers. So clearly, it was much worse in 2023. Wrong. 7 of 17 for 100 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, and a pass breakup in 2023 in press man coverage. I didn't do the math ahead of time here. 16 of 45 for 253, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and 10 pass breakups in the past 2 seasons combined. So yes, a lot of what didn't look as good in 2023 is legitimate, but a lot of it was not in his forte of using press man coverage to win. And overall, he once again in 2023, when given the opportunity to play press man, performed very, very well at it for the second consecutive season. What is Green Bay likely to do more of, at least we think, in 2024? Play press man coverage. It sort of fits with Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, Carrington Valentine, and this new defense, that they're going to probably play this brand of football. And when he was asked to do it, even in his down year that caused him to fall all the way to the end of the 7th round, he did a really good job utilizing that skill set. And how about just man coverage overall? In 22 and 23 combined, 33.3% completion percentage when he's in man coverage, 239 yards, 2 interceptions, and 11 pass breakups, again, per the 33rd team. Those are insane numbers. So yes, he was not as good in zone. Yes, he still was worse in 2023 overall. But when asked to do what he does best, he was still really good at it. And I think that should really give Packer fans a lot of hope as well, considering they are likely going to play a decent amount of press man this upcoming season. At least that's what the thought process is. All right, next up, he's tenacious and unafraid as a tackler, and he's constantly rallying to the football. We'll talk about his tackling technique and stuff in a bit, but overall, he's a willing, aggressive, attacking defender who's coming forward, really just kind of putting his foot in the ground and just triggering and attacking to the ball. And again, he's constantly rallying to the football as well. I think he reads receivers' hands and eyes very, very well. When he is in press man and he plays in phase and he gets his head turned, and like he can tell a lot of times when the ball is coming by reading the receiver. And then once he does that, he does do a great job of getting that head turned and then playing the ball. And sometimes it's a pick. Sometimes it's just all those pass breakups that he raked up through the course of the past couple seasons. But it's all keyed on what the wide receiver is doing. And he picks up on those little ticks and tricks of the trade to know exactly when to get his head turned. And he really does a really nice job of that. And next up, his overall transitions in press coverage are good as well. Now, there's some things at the actual press point. We'll talk about those, but kind of how he jams receivers and his choppy feet at the line of scrimmage. Those are things that he needs to get cleaned up a little bit. But once he gets his hand on the receiver and then flips his hips and turns and runs with the receiver, like that transition, he's not the most insanely fluid change of direction guy in the world, but it looks good. And you see him flip his hips, run in coverage, run in phase, get that head turned, then get his arms up and bat away the ball. Those sort of things just look beautiful. It looks like teaching tape stuff. Now, again, early in the phase, early in that, pressing them at the line of scrimmage and getting those feet to the point of transitioning, definitely some stuff to clean up. But from the next point on, transitioning and then running downfield, sticking with the wide receiver, getting his head turned and batting away the ball, that stuff looks really, really good and is definitely there for these defensive backs coaches to work with and continue to hopefully clean up some of that stuff right at the line of scrimmage to make the entire phase that much better. But again, only 21 years old. All right, like I said, gets his head turned around. Let's next talk about versatility. We know this V word, this versatility word has been thrown around so much with these Packer draft picks and what they're looking for. Here's the first thing. He played left corner and he played right corner. And that doesn't happen all the time in college. A lot of times you're either, on one side or the other. But he played left corner, right corner, and a little bit in the slot as well. The fact that he played both is promising. The fact that he was capable of holding down both positions was promising. The fact that they gave him some time in the slot and he actually looked pretty good doing it is promising. But there's also a lot of people that view that his best position might ultimately be safety in the long run. Here's what I love is that, again, 21-year-old flyer, end of the 7th round, you have multiple positions that he can try. I know Ross really believes that he could be a really good slot corner. I don't necessarily disagree. Well, I don't know that I would go as far to say I think he's going to be a really good slot corner, but I don't disagree necessarily with the fact that I think that could ultimately be his end position. But if it doesn't work at slot, all right, maybe it's going to work as an outside corner. All right, doesn't work at outside corner. All right, let's try him at safety. He has multiple options that he can try at while you're trying to develop him and seeing if just one of those spots sticks. And maybe he can't play outside corner. Maybe he can't play slot. But if he can play safety, you might still have a really good pick in the 7th round here. So there's multiple positions that you can sort of move him around to and try and piece together. And hopefully just one of them fits really well. Maybe more of them do. That'd be great. But if one of them can fit, you still end up with a really good pick here in the 7th round. Plays with good overall balance. He's a good blitzer off the edge, something that we've seen from a lot of these players in this draft class. Very good blitzers. Special teams experience is there, and I do think he has the potential to be a core special teamer. And then as we kind of talked about too, a very, very good scheme fit, assuming that this Jeff Hafley defense becomes what we're assuming it's going to become as more of a man coverage defense in a lot of high leverage situations and probably just a lot of situations in general. And the other thing too about Hafley, we know there's going to be a lot of zone mixed in. He played a lot of different styles of zone coverage in college as well. So he has zone experience, man experience, off man, press man, off zone, cover 4, covered, like he played a lot of it at Penn State. So just knowing that there's going to be a variety of different defenses that he's going to be asked to play under Jeff Hafley, the primary one, hopefully, or at least potentially man, press man, which we know he's great at, but he at least has experience with the other stuff as well. Negatives. The first one, long speed and recovery speed. Not only did it show up with the testing numbers where he just didn't have the great 40-yard dash, but it shows up on tape as well. And that ability to get down the field and stick with faster receivers is something that definitely, or the lack thereof, definitely showed up. And then the other thing too is if he does have some of those issues at the immediate press point at the line of scrimmage where he misses with his hands or his feet do get choppy and now he's a step behind, we talk about Eric Stokes in his prime with that 4.340 speed, having that unbelievable ability to, just catch up to that play and make a play on the ball. King doesn't have that. If the early stuff isn't great, he's just going to get beat, and then he's going to be forced to either get grabby and start holding or just get beat on the play. And that's sort of one of the other things here too, is he does get, far too grabby on plays. And a lot of that's just like he recognizes that he's beat and he can't stick with him and win that foot race, which is why some people think that he's ultimately going to have to move to safety. Receivers with a strong release game at the line of scrimmage give him those troubles. And that's again because his hands get a little bit too all over the place. And sometimes he misses on a jam. Sometimes he's a little bit over aggressive going with both hands. And now he lunges forward and the receiver avoids it. And now he's down the field. You add that with, again, some choppy feet at the line, and you can end up in some really poor situations. Add that to not having the recovery speed, and you end up with a very poor situation. You end up with some choppy feet at the line of scrimmage. And so these are the sort of things here. And you can add some of these up where there's some technique stuff that needs some work. He doesn't have the super high-end traits, doesn't have the super high-end speed, is not necessarily a 6'1" guy with long arms that can make up with some of it with just pure size and length. He doesn't have any of that necessarily going for him. And that's where you can just get into some of these plays where you give up some big plays or there's just easy separation. And that's what we kind of saw in 2023. As much of a willing tackler that he is, there are too many missed tackles that are still on tape. He's over aggressive and he will not, kind of break down in space. You just kind of see him fly by too many times. So that's something that needs to get cleaned up. Needs to do a much better job of understanding route concepts. As we talked about, Marvin Harrison just beat him up a bit. That's an NFL wide receiver. And now he's potentially going to be a really good NFL wide receiver, but you wanted to see him hang in those matchups in 22 and 23 a little bit better. He couldn't, and Marvin Harrison kind of had a field day with him. As we talked about, 2023 tape was not the same, definitely took a step back. He needs to stay more under control, and he lacks any one true ideal trait. Again, it's not the size, it's not the speed, there's not some insane athleticism, it's not technique. There's not one thing that you can point to and be like, this is awesome. This is really great. This is a high-end elite NFL trait. He doesn't have that. And that just kind of makes you clean up everything with your game to make sure everything is good to really good because you might never have elite at any one thing. So that's the other thing here too. That just plays to upside. Like, how good can he possibly get in the NFL? Those are the questions that you have to ask. And that's probably part of the reason why he did fall to the 7th round. All right, what can he bring to the Packers in 2024? Well, he's a developmental corner. I think the nice thing here for Kalen King is you've got Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, Corey Ballantyne. Like, you've got 5 right there. So let's just assume Kalen King is a 6. You don't necessarily need him to come in and play integral minutes right away. He's 21 years old. There's developmental upside there, and that's what you're hoping for. You're not hoping that he's all of a sudden going to be the guy right away. I don't think they're going to need a Carrington Valentine situation, hopefully without crazy injuries, where he's going to have to come in and play a ton right away. So he can just kind of be that developmental 6 key corner with those special teams abilities as well. And when you have those, you have better opportunity to get active on game day. An injury or two happens, you get the opportunity to go in, and now can you hang? Can you play? Can you stay? Can you show that you need to be on the field because you are a really good defender? But it just opens up options for you when you do have that special teams experience. I think he has the potential to play outside in the slot, maybe even at safety long term. I think he can be depth at slot and outside. Again, that's going to give you more opportunities to be active. If you're a special teams guy and can play multiple positions, much more likely that you're going to be on that 48-man game day roster. As I mentioned, somebody who I think can be a core special teamer and somebody that fits very, very well within this Jeff Hafley scheme. So there's a lot to like about all of those things of how he could fit with the Packers in 2024 and try to go about making the 53-man roster. My final thoughts here, 21 years old. 21 years old. That 2022 tape was fantastic. He played really well in man coverage, even in 2023 in his down catastrophic year that pushed him all the way to the end of the 7th round. He's a really good scheme fit for this defense. And like we talked about, we're supposed to talk about like what they can become, not necessarily what they were. We focused on what he was in 2023, But what he can become is hopefully a version of 2022 with more professionalism based on him going to the NFL and getting these professional coaching opportunities and the weight room and everything like that. You know, he's ultra motivated after being selected at the end of the 7th round. You could tell it, in some of his interviews that he wants to come in and crush it and show that everyone was wrong for passing on him until the end of the 7th round. So he's motivated. And last but not least, he's a late round flyer here. I love it. I understand why he went later. I really do. I still think this is probably, 6th round pick at worst. I'm shocked he lasted until the end of the 7th. But 2022 Kalen King, to me, would have been a 3rd, 4th rounder at worst. At worst. And I know some people are saying, 1st round at the beginning of 2023 and things like that. Maybe, but I think probably more that 3rd round range, but never would have gotten out of the 4th, like no matter what, just based on that 2022 tape. But here we are. 2023 wasn't as good, and Green Bay gets the opportunity to sort of, I don't want to say gamble on it, but take a flyer on it and see if they can get him back to playing like the way he was in 2022. It's not going to be easy. He's got tougher competition. He's going to be going against Marvin Harrison-esque receivers just about every single week, but he's got versatility. He's still young enough. Great developmental flyer. Like this pick by Goody, and excited to see what he can become in 2024 and beyond. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Shout out to our Hall of Fame and All-Pro members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Shea Bradad, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Bremen, David Prendergast, Dan Miller, Alex Huang, Arnaldo Espinoza, and Michael Schipper. I will see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy schedule release day. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.